Hello and welcome to another edition of the podcast here. We have a former guest here, Jon B. Jon B., welcome back to the pod.
Thanks, Brandon. Glad to be back. I know it's the first time I've been on since all of this Corona nonsense has gone down. So I'm just glad to talk little sports here.
I know the last time you were on was actually the fantasy football finals when we were doing our fantasy league. Unfortunate end for you. It did result in the trophy behind me. So I had to throw a little bit of shade there, but thanks for coming back on the pod, and we look forward to having you more too.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I know it was a good. I know we've both been in the league since its inception, so good to finally get that final showdown and get one of us our second championship in the books.
Oh, for sure. That's what it's all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So today we're talking about the Patriots draft, and we're going to talk a little bit about whether or not we're going to go through the prospects, and then we're going to talk about whether or not they covered their holes, talk a little bit about the salary cap and any remaining moves we think that could come in. There is a rumor that Alex will be joining midway through the podcast, so always an entertaining event.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye out for that. But let's kick it off here. First pick, it's first round, pick 23. What are the Patriots going to do? I think it's the Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks every year love to trade out of the first round, and they did it again. What were your thoughts there on the trade down from pick 23, where they picked up the 37th pick in the second round and then an additional third round pick?
Yeah, I was totally fine with it. For me, it seemed like pretty good value. I mean, like you said, you kind of have to expect that with the Patriots. They do it almost every year. For me, the one first round type of guy I was kind of interested in if he fell was Tua, which I didn't expect he would, and he didn't get past the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I was totally fine with them trading down. We'll get through some of these players, but it just seemed like kind of a nuts and bolts Patriots draft this year.
It did, and I know the one player that we all have our player that we're like watching the board and we're like, oh my God. For me, it was CD Lamb because I did a lot of research going in on the top receivers of the draft. And when CD Lamb fell past the Broncos, the 49ers, and the Raiders, and I was like, this is the best wideout in the draft, in my opinion. And he ended up going either 17th or 18th to the Dallas Cowboys, which isn't that far from 23. I was starting to be like, not that receiver is the top need for the Patriots, but if you can get an elite player like a CD Lamb there at the top, I would have been all over that. But of course, Jerry Jones sitting there on his Bond villain-esque yacht ends up making the selection after sending his entire scout team home, ruining it for me. So once we got to 23, I was also okay with the trade down. I think the big element there was that the Mohamed Sanu trade earlier took over that second round pick for the Patriots, and they had a long gap going into the draft from pick 23 all the way to pick 87.
Yeah, just back to the CeeDee Lamb situation. I just want to say that I did call that. I know we were texting back and forth, and I said Jerry Jones isn't going to be able to pass this up. But I mean, after reading up on it after the fact, it sounds like you're in this boat, but everyone's kind of praising them for the move just because, like you said, the value. It seems like most experts weren't expecting him to drop that far in the draft.
Well, of course, the Cowboys came out and said, oh, he was number 1 on our draft board.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what everyone says. I think, the 49ers were like Brandon Ayuk, who they drafted in the first round, was their top player on their draft board.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, I'm sure he was.
Right.
But, I mean, I guess you could say the Cowboys also didn't need Joe Burrow, but still, I thought I had in my mock drafts, I did one of those DraftKings or FanDuels. It was free. And I had CD Lamb in the top 10. I really thought he was going to go there, but John Gruden couldn't pass up the speed of Henry Ruggs at 11.
Yeah.
And after that, I don't know. I was surprised to see some of the players that went in front of him. But with CD Lamb off the board, Patriots traded down. Second round pick comes. What was your reaction when they said none of us knew who he was when they drafted him? Kyle Duggar, safety, Lenore Ryan, Division II. What went through your mind, John?
Yeah, I mean, my first reaction was kind of like here we go again, the second round DB. Whether it's Rutgers or D2, this is just a classic Patriots pick. But the more I thought on it, I don't know. just the athleticism. I don't know much about him. I tried to do some, my own scouting, looking at highlights, and there's just not that much out there. But just based on the,
You mean you can't tell
the,
much from Division II highlights where he's
yeah,
running circles
exactly,
around like the future accountants of the world, and
exactly him, blasting 100-yard kick returns left and right against the best D2 has to offer. But no, I mean, you read about him more and read some of the scouting reports. It sounds like he's a, good character guy. Obviously, he has the athleticism. He's really high on the spark, which I know is one of those advanced metrics. But it seems like the Patriots are putting stock in that. And versatile, he's listed as a safety. Sounds like he can, play a little bit of linebacker if needed. So
Mhm.
seems like the Patriots, with some of the subsequent picks as well, were really prioritizing athleticism and versatility on defense.
Oh, completely agreed. And before I go into it too much, I'll let you know. And I'm sure I was texting you at the time. I was pissed, because I didn't know Kyle Duggar, and like I had safety as an overrated need in the draft because they had Devin McCourty, they have Patrick Chung, and
Right.
they brought in Adrian Phillips to a contract with I think it was 3 or 4 million guaranteed, so he's going to be on the roster.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is an opening for a young player to develop behind Chung and McCourty. But with your first pick, and you again trade into the second round after spending all this capital, Cyrus Jones, Jawan Williams, like all these players they kept going after, Duke Dawson. So I was pissed at first. But
Yeah,
then
certainly some
about the
failed experiments at this spot in the past.
But like you said, then you read a little bit and you're like, Kyle Duggar is a little different. And the reason Kyle Duggar is different is some of these second round picks that failed for the Patriots were players that other teams did not have rated highly. The draft Knicks had them later in the draft, like a Jordan Richards was projected in the 5th or 6th round. And then you look at Tavon Wilson, who they thought was going to go in the 7th round. Patriots picked him in the 2nd. Kyle Duggar was widely talked about as the first or second safety in this draft. And like you pointed out, he has that SPARK score, which is a metric, advanced metric used for athleticism, where you combine all their, especially like their results from the combine. Kyle Duggar was 98th percentile, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
6'2", 220 with a 4.49 40. That kind of athleticism and talent you don't see in Division II often. And quite frankly, you don't see that at safety often. Early in the draft, Isaiah Simmons went to the Cardinals, and he's kind of that safety linebacker hybrid. He's a little bigger than Kyle Duggar, but around the same speed. So you can see why that's elite athleticism. And I think what kept Kyle Duggar in the second round was the Division II competition.
Right.
What makes me excited, John, thinking about it, is maybe Belichick. Like, it's clear this is one of the guys Belichick wanted from the draft. They were eyeing him in the first round. They traded down, thought he would drop, and he did. And what excites me is what safety can you think of that does this? And let me explain. With that kind of athleticism, they're saying he could be a potential in the box safety who can also play center field. It's hard to think of many safeties in the time we've been watching the game that could do that. I mean, for me, it's Derwin James for the Chargers, and then it's the late Sean Taylor, who could do that. And I'm not saying that Kyle Duggar is going to be either, but on an athletic, measurable standpoint, he's in that sort of range, which is amazing.
Yeah, hopefully, you hope, just the athleticism will allow him to translate to the NFL, keep up with NFL talent, and hopefully be that versatile player the Patriots are hoping, and play center field a little bit, maybe come up, stop the run a little when needed, and just be that versatile player they're looking for.
I'm excited to see Bill Belichick use a chess piece like this, and I think that's what Belichick wants too. Because if you're the Patriots, you have two ways of going about it. And I'm going to bring this up in terms of the AFC West and what they did. You look at the Broncos and the Raiders, and they said, we're not going to stop the Kansas City Chiefs, so we're going to stock our offense with players to keep up with the Chiefs. Right. Belichick is stocking the defense with athletic, versatile players to match up with these offenses that have a ton of speed, so he can slow them down, slow the game down, and play it on his own terms. And a chess piece like Duggar, who you can play in sub packages at linebacker, you can play him center field or in the box. And I know I'm talking about this as if the pick hit, We don't know that. He's Division
Right.
II player. He did hold his own at the combine and played really well there. So like they're confident that he can play against a high level of competition. But it sounds to me like Belichick saw a guy he thought was unique and stood out and wanted to have him on that defense.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. And I guess just on Duggar, still, you can argue, like we were saying at the beginning here, that maybe safety and defensive backs weren't one of the biggest needs for the Patriots. But I was reading, and it sounds like, I guess, just kind of philosophy for Belichick. It sounds like he's really valuing building up a deep, defensive back core, just because
Mm-hmm.
it's such a pass-heavy league now. You want to be able to have those athletes and cover corners, able to potentially shut down opposing pass attacks.
Mm-hmm. They have the best secondary in the league right now, and they
Yeah.
had it before they brought in Kyle Duggar. I mean, McCourty's one of the best center field players. He's not really a flashy guy, but he plays such a deep center field. It's hard to get deep passes on the Patriots. And then Pat Chung's like a really versatile piece for them who can cover tight ends, play a little bit of the linebacker. And then you look at the cornerbacks too. I mean, does any team go this deep? You have Gilmore, McCourty, J.C. Jackson, and then you have Jonathan Jones, who's their fastest player on that defensive backfield, who covered Tyreek Hill in the playoff game in 2018. And after that, you have a second-round pick in Jawan Williams, who we haven't gotten to see much of him, and he's a bigger player with some athleticism. I think it's exciting to see like how stocked they are in the defensive backfield, that they can match up with some of these teams.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So after going in the defensive backfield here, they follow up in round 2 with Josh Uche, pass rushing specialist out of Michigan, 6'1", 245. He's not, your prototypical tall, he doesn't have your prototypical size for an outside linebacker, but they're saying he can play a little bit off the ball too. Athletic pass rusher. And looking at his highlights, you see a lot of him and Chase Winovich last year in Michigan, running around and terrorizing quarterbacks. I think he's an exciting athletic talent. Where did you come out on this pick?
Yeah, no, watching some of these early round picks, Uche kind of jumped out at me. Just his ability to, get at the quarterback, really, come off the line. I thought he looked pretty impressive in terms of his ability to get into the backfield and really wreak some havoc on, the opposing quarterback.
I think one thing I was worried about with Uche, and I read a lot of things on him being one of the special like pass rushing specialists in the draft, is that his snap count in college never really got higher than 55% in his senior year. And going into his senior year, I think he had in the high 20s, low 30s snap count his junior year. It's a little bit concerning for a second round pick. Like you wonder why couldn't Michigan use him more than they did.
Right.
But also, who better to take a player with these athletic measurables and that pass rushing talent and maximize him at the professional level than Bill Belichick?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, we're kind of adding to a strength here. We're pretty, have a lot of athletes already in the linebacking core, and we're really, adding to our riches, hopefully with Uche here in the second round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
third round.
You have Jamie Collins and Kyle Van Noy who left the team, so you definitely needed to add a little bit of depth there, a little bit of youth, and hopefully they did that here with Josh Uche. And the next player we're going to go over here in the third round, Anthony Jennings from Alabama. He's 6'3", 260, so he's bigger than Josh Uche. I think whereas Uche, you could see him playing a middle linebacker role, like a guy like Teddy Bruschi in college was a pass rusher at 245 pounds, went to the pros and played a little bit more off ball. I could see Anthony Jennings being the guy who's going to be your edge run stopper in the John Simon-esque role to set the edge there in the run game. He's sturdy, he's reliable, and unlike Uche and Duggar, where Duggar comes from Division II, you have question marks there. Uche didn't have the playing time. Anthony Jennings played a lot for Nick Saban at Alabama, and it's a flagship program. So I think what I liked about that was you took a risk on a couple athletic guys who, did have some question marks, and then you went out and you just got a solid football player from a great program who produced for Nick Saban.
Yep, exactly. Like he's got the measurables, like you said. He has, anyone from Alabama, they're getting great coaching. They're going up against great competition. So, kind of the opposite concern you have with Duggar. Jennings is playing against, great talent in the SEC.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's a big guy. Like you said, hopefully he can, maybe be one of those tweeners and maybe play a little end, obviously linebacker. So, again, just, seems like Belichick really highlighting athleticism and versatility. Not going, we're not at the point where we're truly positionless or anything, but getting a lot more chess pieces compared to, the older game. Players who can move around and just really athletic, keeping up with different positions. So it'll be fun to see the defense next year for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I think another point I saw on Anfernee Jennings was that he has really long arms and blocked a lot of passes in his college career as well.
Okay, awesome.
The one I like to bring up downside of each player because I don't know about you. Every time I watch the draft, I come out of it and I'm like, the Pats nailed it. I'm such the eternal optimist. I'm like, these players are great. Do you remember Garrett Mills, the H-back they drafted like years ago? I remember I was so excited about him, and he was such a pile of crap when he finally hit the field. It's, I always feel good, and that's why I do want to bring up some negatives about each player. For Anfernee Jennings, I think the negative was brought up by Chris Gasper of the Boston Globe, brought up that everything you hear about him is high effort player, high motor player, smart, does everything you ask for, but no one really says like, he makes this play that other players don't make. He's not like a spectacular athlete. He seems like more of the, versatile, solid piece for your defense, hard work, high effort guy. So the question is he, you're not getting a high upside player allegedly with Anfernee Jennings.
Yeah, saying he has more of the intangibles, but harder to highlight some of the specific. Like, I guess I didn't look too much about his college stats, but where was he the strongest in terms of like getting sacks or
he was all over the stat sheet. I think that's the crazy thing. Like, he had a lot of tackles for losses, sacks, passes batted down. So I guess it was just athletically they were saying he's not like he's not an Uche or a Duggar on that end. Whereas Uche or Duggar are elite level athletes who maybe didn't get a lot of playing time in Uche's case, and Duggar who went from Division II.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, good to highlight the downsides as well. I mean, there's never a draft where you hit on 100% of the picks, so gotta know what to look for.
So then we get to the tight ends here, and finally, for the first time since 2010, the Patriots drafted tight ends before round, I believe, 4, and they double dipped here with Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene. Devin Asiasi will start off with the negative first because I think it's pretty funny. And count me as someone.
Weight fluctuation.
Yeah, count me as some of an expert on this sort of thing. He could eat himself out of the league. I'm not saying, and I know nothing. I have read nothing about weight problems, but you look at him and you're like, that is a beefy tight end. He reminds me of Algie Crumpler a little bit. He's got movement. He's great after the catch. He actually runs a 4.73 40. But he's a real good blocker and has size to improve in that, obviously. The concern being you don't want him to get a little too crumplery and have some lack of movement towards, the later end of his career. The other element here with Devin Asiasi is he only had one productive season his senior year in college, so it's a little bit of a projection. But in a class that wasn't super strong on tight end, it sounded like he was the best prospect there for a combination of receiving ability and blocking.
Yeah, I mean, here, first of all, I was just glad they addressed tight end in general. This certainly was one of the areas of need. I didn't want to come in with Matt Lacoste and, garbage after him again this season. So I was glad they addressed tight ends.
Yeah,
like you said, reading up on Asiasi, the weight seems to be the main concern.
Was that in there? Because I didn't see it anywhere. You found it?
Yeah, I found some articles that were saying weight fluctuation was an issue with him. So, like you said, hopefully he doesn't need himself out of the league.
Devin, we'll be best friends. Trust me. Like, I'm right there with you, but I'm not a professional athlete.
Love it. It sounds like a good blocker. It sounds like maybe getting off the line, he's not going to be the quickest compared to other tight ends, but it sounds like like you said, his 40 speed is at least decent. So once he gets in space, he can be dangerous. Sounds like he has great hands, so good catchability. Yeah, just glad they addressed tight end. Glad to have a big body in there. Hopefully, someone they can plug in this season. Get some meaningful playing time, and hopefully have someone moving forward who can be a starter for the team.
Oh, absolutely. And we're now getting to my favorite pick of the draft,
Oh,
Dalton
okay.
Keene, the tight end from Virginia Tech. I have to give major props to Doug Kyde of Nesson. I was reading a lot of his articles leading up to the draft, and Keene, he repeatedly picked in mock drafts to the Patriots and kept saying, this is my favorite late round tight end in the draft. Keene was projected to go in like the 5th, 6th round. Patriots traded up in the 3rd. They gave up 2 4th-round picks and a next year's 6th-round pick to trade up for Keene, which means they really like him. And the kicker here, John, they traded with the Jets. And, like, that's the second time Belichick has made a trade with the Jets. The first time was Demaryius Thomas selling out an asset that he knew there was nothing left there last year. So, they really like Keene. And the reason they do, Doug Kyde kept saying this could be this year's George Kittle in the draft, because if you remember, George Kittle went a little bit later in the draft, I believe 3rd round. I could be wrong about that, because while he had the elite athleticism, he didn't have the college production, and he had a similar statistical production to Dalton Keene because he was in an offense that didn't really feature the tight end. Which, first of all, if you were the college coach of George Kittle and you didn't use him, you should be immediately fired from your position and replaced, because, like, you got to change your offense for this guy.
Got to know the players you have.
Right. What I found intriguing about Keene is he had the highest Spark score among tight ends in this year's draft. Again, Spark is a advanced metric where they combine all your results at the combine to kind of decide your overall athleticism. He's 6'4", 253, so he's big. Some people have said he's an H-back. He played a little H-back, but 6'4", 250 is plenty of size to play tight end. He'd probably be more of the movement tight end, 4'7", 140, so he's a little slower than Kittle. Kittle ran a 4.53. So, yeah, I'm not saying this guy's going to be Kittle, but Dalton Keene, when he got to Virginia Tech, started off as a running back, and he runs mean. Look up his highlights. He's got a lot of yards after the catch type highlights, and I think that's what attracted him to the Patriots. What I really like about Asiasi and Keene is they're so different. Asiasi reminds me of he could be the inline tight end, the Algie Crumpler, the blocking with a little bit of receiving ability type tight end for the Patriots. And then Dalton Keene could be the move tight end in their offense. I really want them to get back to that 2 tight end offense. I think we all have, since they didn't have Hernandez and Gronk, and then they brought in, Martellus Bennett. It's just like you said last year, how can you have a successful offense focused around the running game when you don't have production from the tight end position? So I'm glad they double dipped, got 2 players they like who both have blocking ability and certainly athleticism too.
Yeah, I totally agreed with you. Count me as one of the fans hoping they would get back to the, some of those 2 tight end sets at some point. So hopefully we'll see that a little more, starting this season. And yeah, Dalton Keene, I wasn't as familiar with him coming into the draft as you, but I did a little bit of research the last couple of days at least. And yeah, it sounds like he's a, kind of a chess piece. Like you said, I know I've read he has potential to play an H-back potentially. Yeah, it sounds like he didn't get a ton of touches in college. I think I read only 2 receptions per game or something pretty low. So it will be interesting to see him have the opportunity to see more targets in the Patriots offense and just see more playing time in general. And hopefully in combination with Asiasi, who's more of that, seeing traditional tight end, like you said, could be interesting to see on the Patriots offense.
For sure. And I think, like, to your point, and I said Kittle had a similar college production. This is what makes the NFL draft so hard. You're weighing athleticism, projecting players to the NFL level who may not have hit their total potential yet in college. Even a player like Kyle Duggar, you're like, what can you really glean from Division II highlights of Kyle Duggar lighting up like college Jon Barricelli? And, it's like doesn't really say much.
Yeah. Wow, what are you trying to say about me, bud?
I think you've learned everything we were trying to say
I
about you.
think I could hold my own against Kyle Duggar any day.
But yeah, I mean, like that's the interesting thing here about the NFL draft, and you're not going to find a sleeper unless there's some sort of flag against them that caused them to go down. Like someone with Dalton King's athleticism, if he had more production in college, he's going in the first, second round, clearly. So yeah, the negatives again, like for Asiasi and Keene, definitely the fact that Asiasi had 1 year as a starter, and then for Dalton Keene, the fact that you look at him and you're like, well, I think he had 29 college receptions, so you're like, yeah, it's not a huge sample size, but just not really part of the Virginia Tech offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, just to that point about the draft. I mean, truthfully, it can be largely a crapshoot, but I mean, it's a lot of cost benefit, like you said, weighing production versus athleticism, and a lot of it, I feel like, is just the GM saying, okay, how is this player going to fit into our offense, right? Maybe they didn't fit their college scheme necessarily perfectly, but we feel just based on their measurables, their motor, their character, okay, we can get them to do what we want in our offense. So we'll see if Patriots can hit on some of those type of guys this draft.
Absolutely. I mean, you look even like it is just a probability game. We always say, oh, these guys in the first 3 rounds, we're spending more time. I mean, we're going to go over the rounds 4 through 7 picks in about 2 minutes compared to what we've done here in rounds 2 and 3, because generally those are the players you see succeed in the NFL level. But you also see players like all the time, like undrafted free agents come out of nowhere. Like it's just a projection game. You don't really know. You're just taking a chance on players who have either athleticism, production, something you like, and hoping that they can mold into the NFL level. And I think people sometimes like don't take Belichick at his word when he's like, hey, we add players to our team in many ways. And when they come here, we're just going to play the best guy, whoever plays the best in camp. But Belichick really does mean it. I don't know if you remember J.C. Jackson's rookie year. I remember deep in the offseason, he was just an undrafted free agent, and sports radio, probably Adam Jones on 98.5 The Sports Hub, was losing it about J.C. Jackson starting in OTAs. But then you see like months later, you're like, no, this guy's legit. He just happened to go undrafted, but it's just hard to project these guys coming out of college.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. It's, you can never be 100% certain. So as we've seen, just one of the Patriots' philosophies, trade down, just accumulate those draft picks, get a couple more dart throws and see if you could hit on some of those.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. So for the last picks here, the Patriots went in the 5th round with a kicker, Justin Rohrwasser, and then they went offensive line, linebacker, and offensive line again in the 6th and 7th rounds. They got 2 interior offensive linemen, Michael Onwenu from Michigan, Justin Herron from Wake Forest, what sounds like a special teams-esque linebacker, and Cash Malua. He's a linebacker who's 5'11", 235. Sounds like he could be a special teams maven. And Dustin Woodyard, a center from Memphis. We're not going to spend much time on the kicker position, and I know there's some controversy about his tattoo. We're going to stick to football only. I don't want to get into it too much. Certainly, like none of us condone any of that goes on with that tattoo. But from a football,
I mean, just really quickly with the kicker, though, I know it's probably the least sexy pick you can make in a draft for, from a fan perspective, but I was at least glad they addressed it. I'd rather them take a shot on the young kid out of college than spin a crappy veteran kicker roulette wheel like they had to last year when Gostkowski got hurt. So, hopefully he can be the kicker for the Patriots for a long time going forward, rather than, just kind of kicking the tires on retreads who have been multiple spots in the league already.
Oh, completely agree. Belichick has a great track record with identifying kickers. I don't know if you can give him the credit for Adam Vinatieri, but we'll just do it for sake of argument here. I mean, they had Adam Vinatieri. They picked up Robbie Gould as an undrafted free agent. They drafted Stephen Gostkowski. I mean, they've really done a great job identifying these players and drafting them. So I wanted Belichick to take random guy from Marshall, because I thought that he does a great job identifying it. And what's intriguing about Rohrwasser is he's huge. He's like 6'3", like 240, I think. He's a big boy. He can kick the ball, so he's got a lot of potential. bring in some camp competition for him. Bring in Nick Folk or something, and
Sure.
and see if this guy can beat him out. So I thought that was interesting. And I also like they just didn't go with like Blankenship from Georgia, like the standard top kicker in the draft. Like I like
Right.
Belichick's in there after he loses early in the postseason. He's in his laboratory figuring out what works best for his special teams unit, and that's what I wanted to see.
Yeah. I want my guy.
I'll point out too, they've done a lot of drafting of special teamers in the 5th round throughout the years. I want to say Matt Slater might have been a 5th round pick, as was Jake Bailey last year. And there's more too that they've drafted a lot of these players. Joe Cardona, I believe, the long snapper. So that's really where Belichick, I think what he thinks is that these teams, if he picks them in the 5th round, it's a round or two before where they're going to potentially go to other teams. And he identifies the guys he likes. And that's what I like about, this selection.
Yeah, for sure.
For the offensive linemen, I mean, I just think they brought back Joe Thuney, and you like their starters along the offensive line, but they do need some more depth, and they had Jermaine Illuminor they traded for right before the season last year because they were so thin on offensive line depth. I think just had to bring in more young bodies who have potential and just see what happens there.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to know anything about any of these guys, but yeah, like you said, just adding depth, at the very least, competition to the starters, is never a bad thing. So
the only thing I did hear was that Michael Onwenu was really into basketball and has like really quick feet, which is usually a good sign for an offensive lineman. So I don't know. We'll see. It's hard to say. But again, adding some depth to the room, because you look at that starting inside that guard position where you have Thuney, Shaq Mason, and even David Andrews. You have nothing behind that besides Jermaine Illuminar and Hajolti Fruhalt. So, I mean, like, you don't know what you're going to get from either of them. So I definitely like adding competition to the room. And heck, if Belichick likes a linebacker and Cash Malou is supposed to be a special teams type guy, draft him later in the draft. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, we know Belichick loves the special teamers, so just put a premium on that.
No, they absolutely do. All right, so John, going through everyone, we've been through just about everyone here. We're going to go into our next segment here. Remaining holes on the Patriots roster. How do you feel they plugged their holes that they had going into the draft with these positions that we've reviewed?
Yeah, so like we kind of said when we were talking about some of the early picks, like the defensive players, they weren't necessarily needs or huge needs for the Patriots. There you could say maybe quarterback, receiver, some of those skill positions were more. There was more of a need, and they didn't address those positions on offense anyway. So to me, that says, either they like what they have in Stidham, or I know Dalton was released today, so maybe they were just waiting for him to become available.
Maybe.
So we'll see what direction they go. I guess, again, from a philosophy standpoint, if Belichick thinks they can win now, Dalton probably gives you the better chance there. But just, personally as a fan and for the long-term outlook of the team, I kind of hope they roll out Stidham, see what you have there, see how he jives with the offense. I know one of your big complaints last year was Brady not being the best teammate to some of the receivers, not named Julian Edelman. So hopefully if you plug in a Stidham, maybe he can get, tying into one of the next needs, receiver, hopefully get N'Keal Harry a little more involved. Because again, they didn't address receiver at all in the draft. So they must think something positive of what they have. I'd imagine N'Keal Harry in particular.
Yeah, for sure. Belichick in his press conference mentioned Sanu, N'Keal Harry, and even mentioned Damiere Byrd as well, the receiver they picked up from the Arizona Cardinals. Overall, I'm happy with the positions they got. I mean, I think one of the biggest holes we all talked about was tight end. They had no tight ends. It was just a completely ignored position, and not for reasons they didn't have, a lot of opportunity to grab one. Maybe Jared Cook last offseason when Gronk was wavering and ended up, costing them a chance to go out and get a free agent tight end. So with Asiasi and Keene, along with Lacoste, and I'm okay with Lacoste. He's a good third tight end, but he just can't be your primary guy. Right. So I think they covered that hole really well. And then outside linebacker, I thought was a big hole when you lose Jamie Collins and Kyle Van Noy, and you bring in an athletic guy in Josh Uche and it's a solid run stuffer and Anthony Jennings. I'm happy with that. And then again, they had no kicker entering.
Yeah, right.
Like they had to pick a
Can't
kicker.
overlook that. Yeah.
You're right. So I'm happy with that as well. Safety, I didn't think was the biggest need, like I said, but like it's clear Belichick likes Kyle Duggar, and I'm interested to see how that works out. I have to agree with you. The position I think they ignored the most that they should have done a little something at, or maybe not should have, but I was expecting a little something at, is wide receiver. This was everyone was saying, football Twitter kept saying, this is the deepest wide receiver draft in years, and the Patriots drafted not a single one of those players.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a little disappointing. It's also possible some of the guys that they were looking at, maybe a Michael Pittman Jr. in round 2 or a Chase Claypool from Notre Dame, maybe they just got picked before the selections they were going to go in on them. But you look at the offense right now, Edelman's got one or two top flight seasons left, probably more one than two, I would say. But you have Edelman, you have Nikhil, Mohamed Sanu, and then you're looking at Jacoby Myers and Damiere Byrd. You could improve there. And like, I just, how many Marquise Lees have we seen come in the system
right,
and not really perform well? Even if you do follow my train of thought that Brady's hurt a lot of these guys coming in because they can't get on the same page, I just can't get in on Marquise Lee all the way. So I think wide receiver was a big hole. And then I also mentioned offensive tackle because I thought Marcus Cannon should have been a potential cap casualty to clear space on the salary cap, which we'll get into too. So I don't know. They didn't really address offensive tackle until they picked those linemen towards the end of the draft, and they were more of the interior lineman variety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In terms of receiver, though, I mean, I feel like this year for the Patriots, they're probably going to simplify the playbook, simplify the offense a little, especially if it is Stidham who ends up being the starter. Probably have focused run attack, probably simple, a lot of check down, simple passes, easy passes for. So maybe Belichick didn't value that as highly coming into this year. Having said that, yeah, with the deep receiver class, it would have been nice to pick one up somewhere along the way in the early couple of rounds at least. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with the draft. I think building, you already have a solid defense in place, building upon that, trying to be strong on that side of the ball, I think will be key for the team going forward and potentially a young quarterback as your starter.
Yep. I think it's clear that's the direction they're going. They're going defense and running the football, kind of like the 2018 Patriots championship team and 2001 Patriots championship team. I do think there's an element to, and I've been very negative on Tom Brady this offseason, which pains me because obviously I'm a big Tom Brady fan. I mean, like, I've followed the Patriots since, Tom Brady was drafted in 2000. We grew up with the Brady era, and I love the early, Brady era, the first 15 years of Tom Brady. I've gotten really annoyed ever since the whole TB12 nonsense that slowly Brady's kind of fallen off from me, and then he started to skip OTAs, wasn't working with the wideouts. And I think by the end, I was just like, we've been spoiled for so many years. We're lucky, but I'm ready for something new. I'm ready for a team that you can draft a young receiver and, incorporate them into the offense instead of Tom throwing his hands up and being like, I can't work with this guy after he runs the wrong route a couple times, So that's why I look at it, and I look at the receiver position, and it's very hard for us to evaluate going into next year. Particularly N'Keal Harry and Jacoby Myers, because how much of last season was them maybe not being able to hack it in the NFL? How much of it was not really getting a true opportunity, and the offense was just overly complex? So that'll be interesting to watch here.
Yeah, hopefully they'll be able to have, one, hopefully N'Keal Harry will be fully healthy this year, and two, hopefully just get more of a fair shake, not have your quarterback not out to get you, but just not trying to get you as involved as you would hope.
Right. I did a little film study last night, and I'm just going to throw this out here before I give you my conclusions. I am not qualified enough to look at, NFL game film. and give you true
Same here.
analysis, right? But what I can do is I can watch the one-on-one man-to-man coverage and tell you how a receiver is separating, and if a quarterback's going to hit him with it. And one interesting play I noticed in the playoff game, I'm not sure if you remember, there was a deep pass Brady missed N'Keal Harry on going down the right side. And I was watching the play, and N'Keal beats his defender in man-to-man coverage. The defender has outside leverage on him, and N'Keal beats him to the inside and then runs up the field. Brady throws it to the outside and overthrows N'Keal Harry. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, defender has outside leverage, so that means the receiver can't really go to the outside, right? So to me, N'Keal made the right play. He went to the inside, then cut up field, and then Brady throws it outside, and they zoom in on Brady after the play, and he's shaking his head. He's all pissed. And I'm like, you missed him. You just missed him. Like, I don't know. Now, I can't read lips. Maybe he was pissed at himself, but they also give you the end zone view, and I'm watching Brady has a clean pocket. He has plenty of time, and he just misses N'Keal Harry. And I'm like, this is what frustrated me. And then everyone, you get the Brady.
Got a little pithy last year.
Yeah, you get the Bradyites who are like, no, he had no targets. He had a terrible receiving core. I'm not saying he had the best receiving core, but Brady declined. Like, that's a pass he hits.
Yeah, he's got to take some of the blame for the decline in the offense last.
Right.
Like, there were many factors going into it: lack of offensive talent, injuries in general. But yeah, his decline, whether it's just his lack of physical tools starting to decline, or just him not willing to put in the work, like not going to OTAs. But yeah, he just wasn't the same player last year. Didn't seem to have the same competitiveness or drive that he had his entire career in New England up to that point.
Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, I think he's going to have it in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I think he's ready.
Got a lot to prove. Yeah.
He wants to prove that, like, this dynasty was a lot of Tom, and he wants to show that he can hack it without Bill Belichick. So I think he's going to return to the old Tom Brady that I truly admired and loved watching as a player, instead of this zombie who took the field for the last 2 seasons, even in a Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
So overall, I do think they missed out on some opportunities for remaining holes. But, a roster like the Patriots in the NFL, you're always going to have some holes you can't address fully. And overall, like, defense looks similar to last year. You're getting back, David Andrews on the offensive line. If it can stay healthier, you have 2 tight ends now. Devlin retired, and Devlin was a great blocking fullback for them. They also have Danny Vitale they brought in this year, so they're going to have some help there. I could see them being, I don't see why they can't do similar output to what they did last year in the regular season.
Yeah, I forget. I don't know if you're talking record, but what were they, 12-4 last year? I don't know if they're going to hit that, but I at least.
Well, the schedule is harder this year too, so I think they're going to hit 10 wins. I'd put them right in for 10.
Yeah, I think they're in that 9-10 range. I don't want to jump too far ahead because I know we're going to be talking about just where they stack in the AFC, but yeah, I think they're still going to be competitive for sure. Yep.
Well, John, we do. I think we should skip ahead a little bit because we've been running a little bit here on time. So sure. I think we had a couple of other segments we were going to go through, talk about the salary cap moves Pats would want to make, where they stack up in the AFC, or notable picks around the league. Are there any 1 or 2 that you really want to hit on here during your guest appearance?
I guess while we're on it, just where they stack up. I feel like people are a little down on the Patriots. They lost Brady.
Yep.
Not that he was on the team last year, but he's gone to another team. So I guess you could say they got hurt in that regard. Buffalo is up and coming. Miami's up and coming. But, at the end of the day, I think the Patriots are still going to be in the mix. I was checking the Vegas odds the other day. They are still favored to win the division, which I think is the right move.
I think it's accurate.
They've been the dominant team, since Belichick's been the coach, essentially. They're going to take I expect a little step back, not having Brady there, having to have a new quarterback learn the offense and gel with Belichick and the other offensive players a little bit. But like we were just saying, I expect them 9 wins, 10 wins. We'll see if they can do more than that, but certainly in the playoff mix. And I expect them to win the division. Buffalo, to me, they still have to prove it. I don't know, just adding Stephon Diggs is really going to put them over the top. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know if Josh Allen is the guy going forward. So I
I think
expect them to win the division still closer. Um, the competition gap's a little closer than usual, but I still expect them to come out on top. And then in terms of AFC, even, the Chiefs obviously should be favored ahead of them, even should be favored ahead of them. After that, they're given that mix of, at least mid-tier AFC playoff teams.
Well, I mean, look at the Tennessee Titans last year who made it to the AFC Championship game. If you compare them, I think the Patriots have a better defense right now than what the Titans had last year.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, the Titans had Derrick Henry, but Ryan Tannehill played really well at the end of the season for the Titans. But in the playoffs, he really didn't do much other than just maintain the team, and kind of it was more. He really wasn't the reason they were winning. It was mostly that running game and Derrick Henry. To the lesser extent, I think you could have an effective running game with Sony Michel, Damian Williams, Rex Burkhead running for the Patriots, and then call on Stidham to make a few plays here and there. So to me, like you said, like Ravens and Chiefs are definitely ahead. I think a team like the Texans is tough just because of a difference maker like Deshaun Watson is there with them. But I mean, after that, like, there's not really a whole lot in the AFC that really sticks out to you as being like on a whole nother level above the Patriots. Look at the Steelers last year. Steelers similar. They had a really good defense. They had an abysmal offense with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph, who can't play. He can't play football.
Yeah.
And they almost made the playoffs, and they would have made the playoffs this year under the new system with the extra wild card. So to me, the Patriots are going to make the playoffs next year. Division wise, like you said, the Jets defense isn't quite up to sniff yet. They made some good draft picks on the offensive line, but they still, I mean, in terms of weapons, they have Denzel Mims and what else? So and Mims is the rookie receiver.
Yeah, Anderson's gone. Yeah.
I have no faith in Adam Gase. And I know in an upcoming podcast, we're going to have Andy Malakis on, my former co-host at Bryant. And we're going to get the Jets perspective from him. But for me, like, I just don't see the team as like, they obviously have a better chance now, but I think they're the fourth in the AFC East.
Mm-hmm.
The Dolphins made some selections, but Tua's not ready to play yet. You don't even know if Tua's going to be healthy. So, Ryan Fitzpatrick's still a starting quarterback there. They made a lot of free agent additions, but, also all these picks. The problem with trading away Mika Fitzpatrick and the offensive lineman, his name's escaping me right now, that they traded as well. Yeah, Laramie Tunsil. Like, you traded away good players and Kenyon Drake, the running back, for a chance to draft good players, So it's like, I'm not so sure the Dolphins are going to be everything they're cracked up to be either. The Bills, like you said, like, they had a solid defense last year, but man, did that playoff game against the Texans turn me off on them. They should have won that game, and Josh Allen did everything he could to kind of cough that game away.
Yeah.
And I think Belichick, based on that defense and that division, I see no reason why they can't win it. I think a lot of people are just like scared of the post Brady era, but I just think that the difference between, I'm going to sound crazy when I say this, the difference between 2019 Brady and Stidham next year, I'm not so sure it's going to be as large as we all think it's going to be. Even in my head when I say that, I think I'm crazy saying that. But Brady did not look good last season, and I think he cost them, a few wins there, and especially in that playoff game. I think Tom Brady did not play well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Brady's or the offense in general certainly wasn't lighting the world on fire. So yeah, it won't necessarily be as big of a step back, as some people might think. And then just in terms of competing in the division, don't forget coaching. It's obviously immensely important in the NFL, and Belichick, is head and shoulders above the rest in that division for him. So
for sure,
they're always going to have a leg up there.
Yep. Well, we are on the NFL draft, so I think it makes sense. Look, there are salary cap implications for the Patriots. They're going to have to make a move to sign all these draft picks. We'll just quickly say that they need to clear about $600K in order to sign all their draft picks. So they're going to need to make a move. Re-signing Tooney to an extension is probably where they're going. But let's talk more about the draft here as we wrap it up and talk about the league. Notable picks around the league, John. I put down a few here that I thought like really interested me. Jordan Love to the Packers, man, what a selection. What a way to piss Aaron Rodgers off.
I know, right?
This is gonna be the move that we remember. We remember this team for, and that GM, and why I don't know why the coach's name is escaping me. Right, Matt LaFleur. We're gonna remember Matt LaFleur for this draft pick because he basically said, "I'm not happy with the way Aaron Rodgers played last season. I'm gonna bring in a guy I really like and prepare for the future." I don't just think it's a future thing. I think they did this because they didn't like the laziness. Aaron Rodgers throws the football now off his back foot all the time. And I think it's a similar thing to Brady. Like a player becomes so big, he's bigger than the team, that it's not really good for the team. And I really think that's what LaFleur is doing here. And for better or for worse, if Jordan Love flops and they get rid of Aaron Rodgers and he plays well elsewhere, we're going to remember Matt LaFleur as a complete buffoon who drafted Jordan Love instead of surrounding Rodgers with more talent.
I know this is one of the interesting ones because I feel like kind of at face value, I feel like everyone I would consider myself included here is kind of ripping the Packers draft because theoretically you should be a Super Bowl contender with Rodgers. Add a few, you have Devontae Adams, you have Aaron Jones, you have good pieces on offense. Add another receiver, add a tight end. Have a high octane offense to work with. Probably make a run at a Super Bowl potentially, but here, they're clearly looking towards the future with Jordan Love. I know I forget his name, added the BC running back in the second round, which didn't seem to end either.
So AJ Deion or whatever.
Like you said, they're really going to have to hit on Jordan Love in particular. They had a smooth transition from Favre to Rodgers. We'll see if they can do it again from Rodgers to Love. But man, Rodgers is going to be pissed this year. We'll see if it's for better or worse, but.
Well, that's the thing. Like
certainly some question marks with the Packers draft this year.
Yep, I agree. And the one thing too with Aaron Rodgers is everyone's saying Rodgers is actually older than Favre was when they made that move, but it's also a different era. Brett Favre got his body absolutely beaten and beaten down his whole career. I mean, he retired with the Vikings after his body just couldn't take it anymore. I think like you look at what kind of shape Brett Favre was in when they drafted Aaron Rodgers and what kind of shape Aaron Rodgers is in now. Rodgers in this era where Brady's playing till he's 43, Drew Brees is still playing and he's 42. Like I think Rodgers still has another 5 seasons left in the league.
Still playing at a high level, which that's totally different from where Favre was when they were ready to move on from him at that point.
And I do think he played a little bit more lazy last year, but as the season went on, I did see a little bit of retro Rodgers too. So I would have surrounded him with talent. And I also don't think Jordan Love is the right prospect. I think this is a copycat league and teams have seen what Pat Mahomes has done with his unique arm angles and his strong arm. And they see that Jordan Love makes a few of those plays and they're like, ooh, could be the next Pat Mahomes. And it's like, stop going with the herd and actually analyze a player. Like Jordan Love to me was not a first round talent at quarterback. Not that I'm an NFL evaluator or anything, but I think they fell into the comparisons to Patrick Mahomes and really thought that was a player that they needed for the roster. I don't know. I wouldn't have done it. I would have surrounded Rodgers with talent. I kind of like the strategy the Patriots did where they're like, yeah, we're going to ride Brady and then we'll figure out quarterback later. So I don't know. I just don't – I don't think it was the way I would have surrounded it. And a similar notable pick here along the same lines, Jalen Hurts to the Eagles. A lot of people said this is Carson Wentz Hurts and Jalen Hurts, because Carson Wentz is always injured and they want a good backup. But again, for the Eagles, they needed some help on their team and the defensive backfield in particularly. I know they drafted Jalen Reagor in the first round at receiver, but they could have used something other than Jalen Hurts at quarterback too.
Yeah, I mean here. This is a tough one. They definitely had other needs, like you said, but I kind of picked, you can say maybe they're being a little lazy, like, oh, we won the Super Bowl with the backup quarterback before, if Wentz goes down, maybe we'll do it again. But I don't know, just the player compared to Jordan Love, I'm with you. I think that's just kind of a lazy, always the next Mahomes are going to take a shot. I feel like Jalen Hurts, at least he has a track record. He won a championship with Alabama. He's had great coaching throughout his college career with Saban and Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty good character guy. I know he got benched when Tua took over in Alabama, and it seemed like he handled that situation pretty well. And then just in terms of his athleticism, obviously he's a freak athlete. He's super fast, can really get downfield with his legs. We'll see how his if he can develop the passing game a little more. But I didn't watch a ton of Oklahoma, but it sounds like he threw for a lot more touchdowns under Lincoln Riley. So hopefully with those two schemes combined and just his athleticism, he can translate that to the NFL. And it'll be interesting to see how the Eagles use him, if it's a pure backup, if they use him in kind of a Taysom Hill role. So, I'm kind of excited to see how he fits into that offense.
Yeah, I mean, I see all your points, and I think that's why they ended up making the selection. I just I really think the Eagles had a terrible defensive backfield this year, and they needed help at the cornerback position. I would have gone there.
Yeah.
The other thing with Jalen Hurts is we talk about lazy comparisons. I saw an article after the draft where Howie Roseman, the GM for the Eagles, was like, oh, he didn't want to miss out again on Russell Wilson or something.
Oh, God.
Stop with the comparisons. Like, Russell Wilson you're not going to find another Russell Wilson. You're not going to find another Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
Find the next thing. There is no other Tom Brady, and he's not coming.
Yeah, so, these are all Hall of Fame players. They don't come around every year, every couple of years.
It's the same thing when you go to coaching hires in the NFL when they're like, we want the next Sean McVay. Give me the young, hot Cliff Kingsbury.
Zach Taylor now.
Yeah, with the incredible draft background, and Cardinals go out and get him, and it just seems like the NFL does a lot of copycat league stuff. So I've started off with 2 picks I didn't like. I'll give you a pick I do like. Clyde Edwards-Helaire to the Kansas City Chiefs. So Andy Reid knows how to draft running backs. He said he likes him better than Brian Westbrook when he had him with the Eagles. And on top of that, apparently the story is that they called Pat Mahomes before the first round and said, who would you really want here at the selection? And he said Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The quarterback likes him. Andy Reid likes him, who I think is the best offensive coach in the game right now. I'm all over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And, John, I'm in your fantasy league, and I have no problem saying this. If I'm end of the first round, you bet with my snake there at 11 and 12, at 12 and 13. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be one of my picks because whoever is in that Chiefs offense at running back, I don't care if it's Jon Barricelli or Kyle Duggar from Lenoir-Rhyne. He's going to have a lot of production. So I'm all over the Clyde Edwards-Helaire selection. And you know what? If you're the Chiefs and you already have the best offense in the league, why not just put your middle finger up to the rest of the league? We're going to make it just this much harder for you to catch us.
Yeah. But, the rich getting richer there. And, just back to the Andy Reid running backs. I mean, they have always produced under him. And, this is a hand-picked guy, like you said. We'll see how he turns out compared to Brian Westbrook. But, just nice to – obviously, you're getting the buy-in from the coach and just the quarterback buy-in too. That's going to be exciting to see how he fits in. And for fantasy, I know that's a separate topic, probably for another pod, but quickly,
I think it's our favorite topic.
We'll see where he ends up going in the draft, whether it's Brandon into the first round, earlier in the first, who knows, but it's going to be exciting.
Maybe your resident sitting champion here is just raising the price, and I'm trying to Kenyon Drake here at the end of the first round. You'll see.
Geez, always wheeling and dealing.
But, to your point about Andy Reid, you look at some of his backs he's had. He had Brian Westbrook with the Eagles. That went into LaShawn McCoy. Then he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, and all of a sudden he has Jamal Charles. And then after Jamal Charles, we've been kind of waiting for the next guy. They had Kareem Hunt until Kareem Hunt was a total bonehead. Yeah. I just think Andy Reid knows what he wants in a running back, picks the guy. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a guy that I looked and I was like, I see a little bit of Maurice Jones-Drew in him. So I'm very excited because MJD is one of my favorite players.
Awesome.
Finally here, CeeDee Lamb. Clearly, I have a soft spot for CeeDee Lamb, and it's getting harder by the second.
Brandon favorite.
He's a Brandon favorite. I just read about him, and my favorite part about CeeDee Lamb is the fact that he is a devastating blocker. And I love receivers who can block. And I think that's what he had that the receivers from Alabama, Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy, didn't have. CeeDee Lamb's big. He's physical. He can block like Anquan Bolden, and he looks a little bit like DeAndre Hopkins out there. I'm going to fall victim to my comparison too. But I'm really pumped about him. I think he's already the best receiver on the Dallas Cowboys. Come at me with your Amari Cooper love and your Michael Gallup love. Gallup is overhyped. Cooper, look, it depends on what mood he wakes up in. He needs a mood ring before he goes on the football field because you don't know what Amari Cooper you're going to get.
Yeah.
As his fantasy owner last year.
Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be given his – it seems like he kind of packs in against top-level cornerbacks. So.
I will say, too, Jerry Jones.
Lamb can – go ahead.
Jerry Jones, the ultimate Bond villain on his yacht there. He's really going all in on these next few years. I mean, they're going to be in major salary cap trouble if they re-sign Dak because you have Dak on a top contract. You have Amari Cooper top contract. You have at running back, you have Zeke on a top contract. You can't afford all these guys. And then on top of that, you're like, we're going to draft CeeDee Lamb. We're going to bring in Michael Gallup. They're not going to be able to afford any of these guys on second contract the way that their salary cap is looking.
Right.
I know Zeke feels like a beast now, but look at all these running back like Todd Gurley. That looked like a good contract years ago, and it just like it hasn't worked out. And I think you saw that too as Zeke's fantasy owner last year. He didn't have any explosive runs last year. It's a little bit of a warning sign already. So I'm worried about the Cowboys long term, but man, am I in this season. I'm so in this season.
Yeah, that offense is going to be fun to watch. Yeah, probably one of the best receiving cores in the league this coming year.
I do think Amari Cooper is going to disappear even more with another weapon in that offense. Yeah. It's going to be hard to rely on.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to get us back to fantasy quickly. But yeah, it's going to be hard to sort through that offense going into the year. But man, do they have some playmakers there?
They absolutely do. Well, John, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thanks for joining. Doesn't look like Alex will be joining us. We're going to get you on. I think we're at the point of the season here. We can do a little bit of fantasy football talk.
Yeah, anytime.
So, let's get you on. Let's talk about that so I can glean your information, figure out your Allen Robinsons and your Robert Woods before you shove them up my butt on draft day. So.
Yeah, gotta keep some of those close to the vest, but always down to chat a little fantasy football. So anytime.
Yeah. All right, appreciate it, John B., the special guest of the program. We thank everyone for listening. We'll be back. We got plenty to talk about: fantasy football, Patriots offseason, COVID-19 and sports. We're going to talk about it all in the next few weeks here on the podcast. So thanks for joining, John. We look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, anytime. Yep. See you soon, bud.
All right. Catch everyone later.